Developing right now on Morning News Now, burning questions over the safety and security of the president after the calm of an evening centered on celebrating the First Amendment was shattered over the weekend when gunshots rang out at Saturday night's White House Correspondent dinner in Washington. The commander-in-chief, first lady, and other high-profile White House officials whisked away to safety amid the chaos unfolding just steps away. Investigators say the 31-year-old suspect, armed with a shotgun, handgun, and multiple knives, charged a security checkpoint at the Washington Hilton before trading shots with law enforcement, ultimately being tackled to the ground. What we're learning this morning about a possible motive uncovered in a note sent by the suspect to family members just moments before the attack, and how members of the Trump administration are reacting to a harrowing situation that's become all too familiar.
The takeaway that it should be obvious is that the system worked and that we stopped this suspect, and we stopped him as soon as he tried to do what he was trying to do.
We're covering it all this morning, including a chilling first-hand account from our own Andrea Mitchell. Her story and how this weekend's chaos might impact the future of one of Washington's most treasured traditions.
We are so grateful that all of our NBC News colleagues are doing okay, journalists everywhere who was in the room. I was in the room on that night. We were there to celebrate the First Amendment. We immediately started exercising the First Amendment. Everyone there going to work, been working nonstop, including this morning as we work to answer some of these questions about what happened, what we're learning about the suspect, and the many questions we have about security that night. We'll dig into all of that. Good to have you with us on this busy Monday morning, and thanks for joining us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. We're so glad you and all of our colleagues are okay.
We do have a team standing by to talk about this and more. We're going to start things off with NBC News Washington correspondent Alice Barr. Alice, good morning.
Good morning, Joe and Savannah. As President Trump is preparing to welcome the UK's King and Queen today, there are new questions about security. In the moments the nation's top leaders gathered in one place, all had to be hustled to safety. This morning, pressing questions over how a would-be assassin made it into the hotel where President Trump, cabinet members, and top congressional leaders were gathered for the White House Correspondents' dinner. You can hear the gunshots coming from outside the basement ballroom. The president on CBS's 60 Minutes on the moment he was swept out of the room.
I wasn't worried. I understand life. We live in a crazy world.
One floor above, security video shows a gunman sprinting at a security checkpoint, and new video shows him on the ground after officers tackled him. Investigators say the suspect, 31-year-old Cole Allen, was armed with a shotgun, a pistol, and multiple knives. One Secret Service officer was shot in the confrontation, but okay, thanks to his bulletproof vest.
We don't believe anybody else was involved, but again, we have a lot of work left to do.
Police searching Allen's California home as he's expected to be charged in federal court today here in Washington. Investigators say he sent a message to his family shortly before storming the perimeter. In a copy a senior White House official provided to NBC News, he describes himself as a friendly federal assassin, saying his targets were administration officials. Authorities say his family alerted police about the writings. Allen also wrote about what he considered lax security at the hotel, saying he checked in the day before the event.
The system worked and that we stopped this suspect.
Now, in the aftermath of these stunning moments when the nation's top leaders were raced to safety as the media reported amid overturned tables, an urgent push for answers. President Trump is arguing that the security scare demonstrates the need for his planned ballroom with an underground bunker on the White House grounds. The acting attorney general shared a letter urging the National Trust to drop its lawsuit, attempting to block any above-ground construction unless and until Congress signs off. Joe and Savannah.
All right, Alice Barr, thank you so much.
NBC News chief Washington correspondent Andrea Mitchell, she joins us now. She was in the room where it all happened, and we have her eyewitness account of these events. Andrea, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so glad you, our colleagues, fellow journalists, all okay. Tell us your experience. What did you see on Saturday night? Where were you in the room?
Well, it was such an out-of-body experience because I've been to these things for more than 40 years. And here you had the, the Marine band coming in, the flag being presented, the color guard, and the president being welcomed. And we were expecting the presidential speech and the entertainment, of course. And suddenly we heard a couple of gunshots. I heard 3 or maybe 4. And then this SWAT team coming in, I pivoted around, saw that the president had been, taken out and that the vice president had been taken out safely. And it was unusual for them both to be there at the same time at this particular dinner, at this kind of social event, not a national security event. But then when I pivoted around, I saw first a SWAT team coming up the aisle, another SWAT team from behind the stage. So you had 2 fully armed military-style SWAT teams with guns drawn, facing each other, one facing the stage, one facing the ballroom. And what we did not know in the crowd was whether this was an active shooter event. There was no way to know whether there was a shooter in the room or multiple shooters. We just knew that the president was safe, which was, of course, reassuring. But I was sitting at a table, 4 tables from the front of the ballroom at this enormous, thousands of people in this particular. This is the largest ballroom in Washington, the largest arena, space for this kind of thing in Washington. And we were 4 tables from the stage. And we were 1 table from the aisle where the SWAT team was. And we had 2 cabinet members. I was sitting next to Secretary Chris Wright, the Energy Secretary, then Tom Yamas, of course, NBC News, and then the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who's in the line of succession, technically, once it gets to the cabinet from the Hill. And so I immediately thought that this could be what we see from the manifesto actually might have been his intention, a whole of government attack. We didn't know whether there was 1 shooter, more shooters. And so immediately people were shouting, "Get down, get down." Tom Yamas yelled to me, "Andrea, get down," because I was trying to video and get some recording of it, responding more as a reporter, frankly, than as to what was going on. And I then said to the Secretary of Energy next to me, "You get down, you're in the cabinet. They could recognize you if they're going after people." And then everyone was starting to get down under the table, and I saw that Marco Rubio was still not under. He was still sitting, or, almost standing up to see, I think, where his wife was across the table. And I said to him, "Mr. Secretary, you've got to get down. You're in the line of succession." It sounds like a crazy thing to say. But in any case, then everybody got under the table. But what really strikes me after the fact is that while the president and vice president, and it's been noted that the vice president was taken out before the president, I think that's just where he was sitting, closer to where the security teams were behind the stage, that the vice president was out, the president was taken down, tackled, it was described by the people right next to him, and then brought out very, very quickly, within seconds. But that there was quite a lag time before the individual cabinet secretaries' details took them out. I think RFK Jr. first, certainly the Secretary of State, diplomatic security did their job, but it took them a while to get through the crowd, the wait staff, very crowded ballroom. And then finally, the Secretary of Energy's detail came, and they were taken out. And by then, we were under the table because we did not know how long it would take for an all clear, and it did take quite a time for an all clear.
Right. And first of all, no one who works at NBC News is surprised that Andrea Mitchell was shooting video when she should have been going underneath the table.
I love that Tom said, "Andrea, get down."
Get down. To echo Andrea's point of just how massive this ballroom was. So Andrea's sort of more in the middle toward the front. I was on the outskirts off to the side, and it was an entirely different experience, I've learned, for those of us who were there, because we couldn't hear gunshots. We could just hear that there was some sort of commotion. You almost wondered, like, had someone dropped some plates, or maybe it's like when you cover a rally and a protester shows up, starts making noise, and then gets ushered out. So while everyone who was in the middle of the room was going underneath the tables, all of us were standing up to try and see what was going on because we just didn't understand. And then you start to actually see the SWAT teams, the Secret Service, walking on the tables because there's no room to walk in between people to get there. And that's when we start to realize something unusual is going on. So a different experience for those on the outskirts. But Andrea, I know this was the first White House Correspondents' dinner Mr. Trump has chosen to attend as president in both terms. You've been to many of them. What was the mood leading up to this event, and especially with security? Because I know even walking into the event, I had some concerns about security, especially when it came to checking the tickets, which are not scanned at all, by the way.
Well, very frankly, I did not sense any fears about security. There was bad weather, pouring rainstorm. We knew that there were protesters, so we had to be dropped several blocks away and get very wet trying to get in. And then there was a big crowd of guests huddled outside trying to stay under the overhead, so not to get further wet, because it took us a long time to get into the building. We were stopped a couple of blocks away, maybe 1 block away, I should say, by Secret Service looking at our, official licenses and at our invitations. Then you just get into the building, and the magnetometers are, on a different floor farther inside. There's all of these receptions along the perimeter of the event itself from different media organizations, and there's no security before getting into them. So it is not a good security situation, but it's not the kind of thing that you really think about because, frankly, these events have been held there for, decades, as you point out, and the only previous experience, of a real threat in that location, of course, was the March 1981 assassination attempt and the near fatal shooting, really, we later discovered, not until decades later, of Ronald Reagan. And NBC was pooled for that. So our correspondent, Judy Woodruff, at the time, our White House correspondent, was the only reporter outside. Shelley Fieldman, the videographer who took all of the video. And that was a terrifying experience for everyone, of course. I was in the bureau, then sent to the hospital. But we didn't have cell phones, of course, so Judy had to get to a telephone booth and learn that he had been diverted to the hospital and go to the White House and get on live from there. I mean, we didn't have the communications, obviously, that we have now in 1981, and that later turned out to be, as we discovered from history and from medical recollections years and years later, came within, less than an inch of the president's heart.
Again, Andrea, you made this point earlier, but just this important historic place in Washington history and where events like this always are and where we've seen that happen. Andrea, later today, King Charles arrives. You have to wonder if this presents any security concerns for that visit.
Well, I saw the ambassador yesterday, the ambassador from the United Kingdom, Sir Christian Turner, and he is confident that this security will be fine. Now, that said, he has many public events as well as the private events. This is an historic visit. It's his first, the state visit, of course, since ascending to the throne. His mother had been here many times. There were 2 official state visits and then a 3rd visit in 2007 when she went to Jamestown. I was at that one down near historic Williamsburg, where the first British settlers first landed. And the security is going to be very tight. The Secret Service is reevaluating with the British superb service, diplomatic security, what public events and how that should be handled. He has a public event which has been announced in Virginia, and that one may be altered somewhat. There's a garden party reception that many people, more than 500 people, I believe I'll be there this afternoon at the embassy. And, of course, the official welcome, the state dinner. There's no return dinner, which sometimes takes place. It's a somewhat shorter visit. He will be going to New York City. There is a tour, a public tour, and several private events in New York. So it's an extensive schedule. And, of course, the Queen will be here as well, Queen Camilla. And it's at a very important moment. As you know, there are a lot of controversies, a very difficult relationship between the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, and the President of the United States, first over tariffs, now specifically over Iran. The President has blistered the Prime Minister. He's also in trouble over the whole controversy over Epstein. The King has taken a very proactive role in stripping his brother Andrew of his royal title and duties. But the survivors want to meet with the King. That is, we're told, not going to happen, that it is not appropriate, but that the King has already taken this very public position. And frankly, the Brits have been much more proactive, according to many of the survivor community, than the American officials have been, the Justice Department and others who've been so widely criticized. So that is one of the issues, because now there is a recurrent issue over whether or not the Prime Minister should have known that his appointed political ambassador to the United States had a close relationship, a business and social relationship with Epstein that had not been previously revealed to Parliament and to number 10 Downing Street, he claims. There's accusations of a cover-up. That is separate from the king. The king, in the British system, according to the ambassador, the king is above politics, is not part of the government. He is the leader of the state, but he is not part of the political system, and so will not have any involvement in that. But this is all, of course, fraught, as there is a dispute with the U.S. over the British insistence that the war had no imminent threat and that, therefore, they only joined a day later in basing rights.
Andrea Mitchell, thank you so much for walking us through that and, of course, for sharing your personal account of Saturday. We're so glad you're okay.
Always good to have Andrea with us. Let's talk more about what we know about the suspect, what we can expect from his arraignment today with NBC News political reporter Megan Leibowitz. So, Megan, as we mentioned, the suspect's been identified as Cole Thomas Allen, a well-educated 31-year-old from California. Tell us, what is expected with this court appearance today? What will he be charged with?
Yeah, that's right. So we're expecting to hear him be charged formally in court today. And U.S. Attorney for D.C. Jeanine Pirro laid out over the weekend what she says that he will be charged with, at least preliminarily. So she said that he would be charged with 2 counts of using a firearm during a crime, assault on a federal officer, using a dangerous weapon as well. Now, of course, both Pirro and Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche had said over the weekend, they emphasized that there could be additional charges because this investigation is still in its very early stages, and as they're learning more about the suspect and the suspect's motive, there could be additional charges that come up. Now, again, this is something that they had emphasized over the weekend with Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche saying on Meet the Press, emphasizing that they're really in the early stages of this. At this point now, this morning, this is still less than 36 hours old. So we're really still in the process of learning more about the suspect. We, of course, had learned more about the suspect's motive from his writings that he had sent to family before the shooting as well. And Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche also described in Meet the Press a little bit more about what we're learning about the suspect traveling by train to D.C., traveling from outside of the Los Angeles area, taking a train from Los Angeles to Chicago, and then Chicago to D.C., where he checked into the hotel about a day or two before this event actually took place at that very same hotel. But again, early stages of the investigation, and we're expecting to continue to learn more as this unfolds and as we learn more about the charges that we're expecting to see filed later today.
Megan, we have some details now, too, just about the suspect himself and his background. What do we know?
Yeah, so he was trained as an engineer and more recently worked on developing video games and worked part-time as a teacher. He actually was awarded Teacher of the Month in December 2024 by his company. Now, we're also learning, according to his LinkedIn, that he graduated from Caltech in 2017 and that he went on to get a master's degree in computer science from California State University. We're also learning that he bought his guns legally. He bought a shotgun in August of 2025. And he bought a pistol in October of 2023. Now, according to a senior administration official, the suspect's sister said in an interview with law enforcement that the suspect had frequently gone to shooting ranges in order to practice, to train with his guns, really. And his sister also told law enforcement that her brother had a tendency to make radical statements and to say more and to describe what he wanted to do something to fix what he saw as problems with the world. So that's some of the preliminary information that we're starting to learn. He also had been described by people who knew the suspect back in California or in school as someone who is very smart. But again, all still in the very early stages, and we're expecting to learn more about the suspect as this continues to unfold.
And Megan, we're also learning a bit about the suspect's potential motive through some of his own writings, which have come through NBC's reporting. What's coming out of that?
Yeah, so the suspect had sent writings allegedly to his family just about 10 minutes before this attack unfolded. And it gave us a bit more insight into his motivation for trying to carry out this attack. He said that he wanted to target administration officials, that he wanted to target them from his perspective as people from the highest highest position of power to the lowest. He also described that he did not intend to target guests. He did not intend to target members of the hotel staff as well. Also in those writings, he apologized to his parents, his colleagues, and others, his students as well, for what he was about to do, saying that he did not expect forgiveness for what he was about to carry out. Also, notably, he expressed surprise in his writings that there was not more security going into the event. He expressed that he had expected he was worried that he was going to be stopped and that there would be more checks into that as well. So he expressed surprise into that aspect as well, but certainly giving us more insight into what was going through his mind ahead of this. He had expressed strong criticism of the president, though he did not explicitly mention President Trump by name.
All right, Megan Leibowitz, appreciate your reporting on this. Thank you so much.
Let's continue this conversation with NBC News law enforcement analyst Jim Kavanaugh. Jim, good morning. Thanks, as always, for being with us. So I want to start by getting your reaction to the surveillance footage when that first came out Saturday night, because it shows, obviously, exactly the moment that this incident unfolded. How well do you think that security handled it based on what you see in this video?
Well, I think Secret Service did a good job. They stopped the attacker at the first security perimeter, which is near the magnetometer. So that's their first ring of at least a triple ring of security that they have around the ballroom and then around the president and the vice president. So that worked. They should get credit for that. But they're the gold standard, and they're going to look at this themselves very harshly and find their flaws, and there's some there, and they can fix those and make them even better. And that's why they're such a good organization. But the thing that stands out, obviously, is you can't give an attacker a 45-yard runway to go past a magnetometer. That magnetometer's got to be blocked on the sides, either through walls, and you only can go through the door, or, you know, a snake gates like you see at the airport where the line goes through the gates, snakes through, which prevents someone from, you know, a bum rush charge at the security officers who are standing there. And you also have to look at this. What if we were dealing with 5 or 6 Iranian fanatical suicide attackers with submachine guns who could easily check into that hotel, maybe even with hand grenades? They're fanatics, they're suicidal, they want to avenge the Ayatollah, and they charge that magnetometer. The first 2 charge and then the second 2 charge, we could have had an unmitigated disaster. Now, inside the ballroom, just to close, the counter-assault team, Secret Service CAT team, they were quick, they were on their game, they were up, but we don't want to see a gunfight in the ballroom with thousands of people. So the Secret Service is going to look at all that. They're going to tighten that up. They're going to make sure that nobody can get past a magnetometer like that. They did stop them, but you want to stop them on the other side of it. You don't even want them to penetrate that first line of security.
I think it's important for people to maybe understand what the layout is there at the Hilton Ballroom. It is below ground, a couple floors. So as Andrea sort of explained earlier, you could get into the Hilton pretty easily if you had a room there or you were meeting people there. And then you go down one set of escalators. You were supposed to show your paper ticket there. I would argue probably could have slid through that pretty easily without someone actually stopping you. You go down to one floor, and from there it's pretty open. There's parties going on. People are socializing. You can access that area before you would go through the metal detectors that we saw in the video there. And then once you're through those metal detectors, basically you go down a set of stairs and you're in the ballroom in the back of the ballroom. So that's sort of the layout there. And some of the scenarios Jim spelled out there, why people are so concerned. If suddenly a massive group of people came in with weapons, with bombs, anything like that, they could probably get pretty close to the ballroom.
And to your point, able to check into the hotel.
Exactly, because people in public did have access just 2 floors above.
And don't think somebody couldn't smuggle a gun, a second assassin smuggle a gun inside the ballroom. And when the chaos unfolds, you know, get up and shoot it. We want to be confident that they can't. But people can do some amazing things when they're determined, or if they're backed by terrorist groups or even foreign governments. You know, plastic guns, they could go weeks before. We talk about the assassination attempt on Margaret Thatcher back in the 80s in Brighton, England, on the beach. the IRA surveilled the hotel where the Prime Minister Thatcher was going to speak a year before the event and planted the bomb 24 days prior to her speaking, with a time delay on it for 24 days. And when the bomb detonated, it killed 5 members of the Conservative Party, wounded 30 severely, and she narrowly escaped death. I mean, she just left her bathroom in her hotel suite. If she'd stayed in there 2 minutes earlier, she'd have been killed. So a year surveillance, a year ahead, a bomb planted a month ahead. Don't think these attackers can't be sophisticated. But just to close, Savannah and Joe, I mean, Andrea Mitchell is amazing. I mean, she is the walking, talking First Amendment. And what eyewitness report we just saw. So, you know, as a law enforcement officer my whole life, just hearing her eyewitness testimony, you know, she'd be like the perfect witness in one of our cases. So what a great job. I'm so glad nobody else was hurt. And this guy needs to be a friendly federal inmate. I think they should add some good other firearms charges. My favorite was always interstate transportation of firearms with the intent to commit a felony. That's a good, clear charge they can lay on this guy. And also, you know, failure to notify the common interstate carrier, which would be Amtrak, that you're carrying firearms. So they have other charges to lay on this guy besides, you know, attempted murder, assault on federal officers. And they may even lay some, you know, assassination attempt charges on him. They need to stack him up so he can be that friendly federal inmate and not hurt anybody for many, many, many years. He's a feckless, hapless loser, and he made it past the magnetometer. So the service will hot wash it. They're very good. They're going to hot wash it. They're going to, after action, and they're going to even make it even tighter.
All right, Jim Kavanaugh, as always, thanks for joining us.
Saturday night shooting is again putting political violence in the spotlight in this country. NBC News Chief Justice and National Affairs Correspondent Kelly O'Donnell takes a closer look at the rise in incidents. She also spoke with a photographer who had a close-up view of the dramatic first moments after those shots rang out.
In that tightly packed ballroom, chaos and confusion was quickly all too familiar. Threats of political violence are stress testing security and society. From Butler, Pennsylvania in 2024 to this black tie dinner evacuation. The president asked about the heightened risk environment.
Is that just the cost of doing business to do politics in America anymore?
Yeah, well,
what does that say about our country?
Too. You know, we're not the only country. You look at this great violence with all countries.
Targeted political violence is up dramatically, more than 30% from 2024 through last year, according to university researchers, including arson at the Pennsylvania governor's home, an attack on Minnesota legislators, the Charlie Kirk assassination. Kirk's widow, Erica Kirk, affected again as a dinner guest. Where? As security details swarmed dignitaries, photographer Andrew Harnick, who was seated at the head table, picked up his camera.
And by the time I was able to press record, the vice president was being yanked off the stage, as you see in the dramatic video that I was able to capture. What we contribute to the press corps is capturing what happens in the moment, and obviously that happened very quickly.
President Trump said he would like to see the dinner rescheduled within 30 days. He described not wanting to allow offenders to derail a high-profile event honoring the First Amendment. But it's unclear what comes next. There are costs, logistics, a variety of considerations. The dinner is run by the nonprofit White House Correspondents Association, and its board will need to figure out those next steps. The president may encourage a quick do-over, but we do not know when, if, or how that would happen.
Thank you, Kelly O'Donnell, past president of that very association. Much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now. We will have continuing coverage of the chaos that unfolded at the White House Correspondents' dinner in Washington over the weekend. The attack from the eyes of our very own Gabe Gutierrez.
First, though, after the break, stalemate Middle East peace talks scrapped by President Trump. The global fallout as that shaky ceasefire with Iran holds. That's next.
We're back now with the latest out of the Middle East. Hopes for a diplomatic breakthrough between the U.S. and Iran faded on Sunday. Efforts to revive peace talks amid that indefinite ceasefire stalled. President Trump said he canceled the U.S. delegation's trip to Pakistan for those renewed negotiations. He cited too much time wasted on travel and, quote, tremendous infighting and confusion among Iran's leadership. NBC News chief international correspondent Keir Simmons has the latest from Pakistan.
Iran trying not to appear isolated. Its foreign minister here in Pakistan for the second time in as many days, after meeting the Emir of Oman and phone calls with France, Saudi Arabia and Qatar. But there'll be no face-to-face with the US for now. This week's high security in Islamabad dismantled. Iranian officials had said no direct US negotiations were planned, but President Trump says he called off a meeting.
We're not going to spend 15 hours in airplanes all the time going back and forth to be giving a document that was not good enough. And so we'll deal by telephone, and they can call us anytime they want.
At meetings this weekend, Iranian state media says the foreign minister argued the U.S. military should leave the Middle East, while President Trump insisting
it's not going to deter me from winning the war in Iran.
For now, that means a stalemate in the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM saying it intercepted an oil tanker serving Iran and sanctioned by the US. While from Iran, new images of two cargo ships it seized last week. Meanwhile, renewed strikes between Israel and Iranian proxy Hezbollah in Lebanon, despite a 3-week ceasefire. This is a fragile peace with no diplomatic resolution in sight. Keir Simmons, NBC News.
Coming up, the search for a motive in this weekend's chaos at the White House Correspondents' dinner in Washington.
After the break, how President Trump is reacting to the suspect's alleged writing sent to family members moments before the attack, and more on the 31-year-old's past. That is next. We're back with more on our top story, the dramatic shooting at the White House Correspondents' dinner on Saturday.
A federal investigation is underway into the incident, which saw President Trump and other administration officials whisked away from the scene. This morning, we are learning more about the 31-year-old suspect from California and his potential motives ahead of his arraignment in federal court today.
NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez was at the dinner when the shooting happened. Joins us now. Gabe, good to have you with us. Just walk us through what you witnessed that night, how it all unfolded from your perspective where you were seated.
Well, Joe, it was very quick. It all happened just within a few seconds, and we did see President Trump being whisked away very quickly. There was a surprise and look of the First Lady's face as the Vice President was yanked away by Secret Service. But from the perspective of someone sitting in the room, we were sitting with different cabinet officials. There was Secretary Doug Burgum was at my table. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was nearby. Secret Service agents stormed into the room and whisked them away as well, along with House Speaker Mike Johnson. It was a very tense atmosphere. The dinner had just started. The salad course was underway. And this really, the night took a dramatic turn. And there was a lot of confusion inside that ballroom for quite some time before President Trump posted on social media and announced that he would be briefing reporters at the White House shortly. Joe and Savannah.
So, Gabe, we do have NBC News obtaining some of the suspect's writings from a senior administration official, which he allegedly sent to these family members just moments before the attack. What are we learning about what he said and his potential motive?
Right, and some disturbing writings. That suspect identified as 31-year-old Cole Allen. Investigators are right now looking through his home in Southern California and trying to learn more about this motive. But you're right, we did receive those writings from a senior administration official, and in that writing, that note that he sent to family members allegedly, he wrote about targeting administration officials, although he did not mention President Trump by name, but he signaled opposition to several of the administration's policies and also alluded to unfounded allegations of the president's ties to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, although he, again, did not mention the president by name. President Trump, though, reacting to this note and, saying that he was, quote, probably a very sick person, but the acting attorney general saying that they will continue this investigation to try and determine his exact motive. We understand from investigators that the suspect had checked into the Washington Hilton, and he mentions that in his note, allegedly, describing how he thought that there was not enough security. He was surprised to not see enough security at the hotel, John Savannah.
And Gabe, you touched on the president's reaction here, but what else are we hearing from Mr. Trump just about this incident and about the suspect's alleged writings?
Well, look, he's revealing his initial reaction to this, and initially he thought that it was a tray that was falling perhaps in the back of the ballroom. Of course, this all changed very quickly, but he spoke out to 60 Minutes yesterday. He also reacted angrily to those portions of the writings where the suspect alluded to those unfounded allegations. Let's listen to a portion of what the president told 60 Minutes.
His family was very concerned. He was probably a pretty sick guy. I'm not a pedophile. You read that crap from some sick person. I got associated with all stuff that has nothing to do with me. I was totally exonerated.
Now, the president says he wants to redo the dinner within 30 days, although at this point there remain a lot of questions about whether that will happen. And there are many fresh questions, Joe and Savannah, about security at this hotel, which was the same location where President Reagan was nearly assassinated some 45 years ago.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez. Gabe, thank you so much.
One other news this morning, we're tracking a deadly line of storms that's making its way across the country. Millions of people are waking up under severe weather alerts as powerful storms spawn tornadoes in several states, including Texas, which is still cleaning up from the last round of storms. NBC News correspondent Ryan Chandler is in Runaway Bay, Texas, which is just west of Fort Worth, and he joins us now with the latest. Ryan, good morning.
Well, Savannah, good morning. You're right. It has been a long and active stretch of severe weather here in the region. And unfortunately, here in Texas, these severe storms are now turning deadly, with the threat not over yet. Now that tornado threat moves to the Midwest, with millions more at risk as people here in the South only begin to assess the damage.
Overnight, severe storms and reported tornadoes touching down in multiple states. North Texas pummeled over the weekend, with rain and hail sweeping through.
That's not even where that's supposed to be.
Tornadoes destroying homes, claiming at least 2 lives.
Before these strong storms hit Springtown last night, a mobile home stood right here. Now it's a pile of rubble 50 feet away, and officials tell us a woman lost her life inside.
That tornado and strong frontline winds damaged dozens of homes and displaced at least 50 people. Twisters also touching down in Kansas, where the winds flipped a train on its side. Folks in Enid, Oklahoma are still surveying the damage caused by a massive EF4 tornado.
This is our living room over here.
Maddie Boyd's home is now a wreck, but she's grateful her family is safe.
The only thing I ever know how to do in situations like that is pray. I was just yelling, asking, hey, if you take everything, just let us keep our family. Let us keep our neighbors. Just keep everyone safe, please.
Meanwhile, wildfires burning in drought-stricken Georgia intensifying Sunday, burning homes to the ground and forcing hundreds to evacuate.
I was talking to the mayor over in Springtown yesterday. He said, look, this region is used to tornadoes, but it's been a long time since they've seen damage like this. They were prepared to host 50 people at a shelter set up by the Red Cross at a local church, as so many remain displaced. Savannah.
All right, Ryan, thank you.
For more on the severe storms, let's get a closer look at your Morning News Now weather.
Meteorologist Andrea Romero joins us now. Hey, Andrea, good morning.
Good morning, Joe and Savannah. And we've been tracking a line of storms this morning that's bringing severe weather here to parts of the country. We can see all that heavy rain activity with all that lightning moving towards parts of Missouri, exiting out of Kansas into parts of Illinois, and expected to move into Indiana, even in parts of the Tennessee and Ohio River Valley. We do have a tornado warning that has been up here for parts of Missouri that will continue in effect for the next half hour or so. So it's definitely severe conditions that are moving across the country. And we're expecting the severe threat to continue. Over 37 million people will be at risk throughout the day today, and the possibility of those strong tornadoes that could reach even EF3 category. So we're talking about really strong, powerful tornadoes, long tracking tornadoes that are possible in that area, as well as the damaging hail with 2-inch or more in diameter, wind gusts of over 60 miles per hour. Along with the severe weather threat, we also have the flood alerts, we have flood watches, and we even have flash flood warnings up. That, of course, means that we are expecting those conditions to persist. So you want to make sure that you turn around and you don't drown if you're in those areas with that heavy rainfall. And the flash flood risk will continue today in that area, and possibly through the next couple of days in that whole location. We can see all that rain that will be accumulating up to 3 inches. And as this storm continues to move on eastward, today it will be the Midwest that will be impacting, but we're expecting tomorrow that threat to shift to the south with storms developing from Dallas to Nashville. The tornado threat might not be as much as it is today in that area, but we're still expecting those wind gusts. And of course, we're still monitoring that fire weather threat in the southern plains.
Andrea, thank you so much. A lot to watch. Coming up, a royal welcome slated for today in Washington.
The pomp, pageantry, and diplomacy on display as King Charles and Queen Camilla head stateside in the aftermath of this weekend's chaos at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. That's next. Stay with us. Welcome back. In just a few hours, King Charles and Queen Camilla will arrive in Washington, going ahead with their first official state visit to the United States as King and Queen, despite Saturday's shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
The 4-day royal visit is designed to highlight the deep ties between the two nations. It comes at a pivotal moment for the longtime allies, with ceremony and diplomacy on full display, including a White House state dinner and an address to Congress by the King. NBC News correspondent Erin McLaughlin has a preview.
This morning, a royal welcome for King Charles and Queen Camilla. The British monarch set to arrive from across the pond for a high-profile state visit to celebrate 250 years of American independence, aimed at reinforcing the bond between the two allies.
This event is, I would say, the most important trip that the King has undertaken since he was crowned.
The trip is a milestone moment for King Charles, marking his 20th visit to the U.S., but first since taking the throne. It's also the first state visit by a British monarch since his mother, Queen Elizabeth, in 2007.
Prince Philip and I are most grateful for your generous hospitality.
First on the royal agenda, a private tea with President Trump and the First Lady, followed by a ceremonial welcome and glitzy state dinner at the White House. But the most consequential event of the visit may be King Charles's address to Congress. The new British ambassador telling NBC's Andrea Mitchell what to expect from the King's remarks.
There's a strong emphasis on our shared values, on the moments where we have come together, and how still today we're an essential part of the forces that shape the world.
After Washington, the royals head to New York City, where they will attend a 9/11 memorial ceremony with the city's mayor. Their trip wraps in Virginia with a celebration honoring America's 250th birthday. Notably absent from the schedule, a meeting between the King and his son, Prince Harry, who lives in California.
The last thing the British government need is for this trip to be overshadowed by a 10-minute cup of tea that Charles and Harry have together.
The visit comes at a pivotal moment in U.S.-UK relations, with the two countries at odds over the Iran war. President Trump expressed admiration for the British monarchy and King Charles during his state visit to England last year.
This is truly one of the highest honors of my life.
Now a critical visit in our nation's shared history that could help define what comes next.
Our thanks to Aaron McLaughlin for that report. Well, a Buckingham Palace spokesperson told NBC News the King and Queen are grateful for those who ensured the safety for their visit and are looking forward to what's ahead this week.
All right, let's get a closer look at some of the latest financial headlines this morning, including a fresh read on the price of oil from Goldman Sachs.
NBC News business and economy reporter Ali Canal has our Money Minute. Hey, Ali, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Savannah. Yeah, Goldman Sachs, it's raising its forecast for oil prices. So the bank now sees Brent crude, that's the global benchmark, at around $90 a barrel by the end of this year. That's up from its previous forecast of 80. The upgrade comes as the Strait of Hormuz remains effectively shut as the Iran war dragged on, with as much as 14.5 million barrels of oil a day disrupted. That's really limiting that supply there. And it's also driving a record drain on global inventories. At current levels, Brent is trading at just around $100 a barrel. Meanwhile, Google is planning to invest up to $40 billion in Anthropic. That's a startup behind the cloud chatbot. And this comes as big tech doubles down on building out that AI infrastructure. Now, Google will start with a $10 billion investment. This will value Anthropic at about $350 billion, with another $30 billion potentially to follow if certain targets are met. Now, the deal builds on investments from other tech giants, including Amazon, as Anthropic scales to meet surging demand for its AI tools. And from AI to a little thriller at the box office, Michael, the biopic on Michael Jackson, pulled in more than $217 million globally in its opening weekend. That includes about $97 million in the U.S. and Canada. That's the biggest ever for a biopic. And get this, critic reviews were mostly negative, but audiences disagreed, with the 97% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes compared to just 37% from critics. I'm always so fascinated when you see that split, but people like it. I've been seeing it on Instagram, on TikTok, people talking about it. So we'll see. I haven't tuned in yet. But
I think it's the difference between the people who like the music and the people who criticize movies. And sort of the differences there.
Absolutely.
If you just want to bop and jam, I'm sure it's
Right.
a movie that you would enjoy.
Exactly.
Thank you, Ali.
Of course.
Turning now to a deepening water crisis in Corpus Christi. Texas officials are warning the city could run out of water in a matter of months if conditions don't improve. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa tells us why.
A water crisis mounting in Corpus Christi, Texas, where drone video shows docks once surrounded by water, now sitting on dry land.
This is unprecedented territory.
Droughts have been crippling this area for years. Now local officials are warning the city's reservoirs are on track to run dry by next year, revealing plans to potentially declare a water emergency that as soon as September would force all local residents and businesses to cut usage by 25%. Limiting the average household to 5,200 gallons of water per month. One study shows the average American household uses 9,000 to 12,000 gallons monthly. Close to 500,000 local homeowners now fearing the surcharges that could come with going over.
People take daily showers. I do, so I would have to cut back on showers.
All while big questions loom about the area's largest water consumers, 20 major industrial facilities who officials say consume more than half of Corpus Christi's water. The top user, according to the city manager, ExxonMobil.
They used about 13 million gallons a day of water.
In a statement, a spokesperson for ExxonMobil said in part the company continuously recycles water, is looking for additional ways to reduce its water use, and that the site is also exploring alternative water sources.
Are you confident that those largest industrial customers will comply?
We are confident. We know all of them and their lead, either plant managers or area managers well. Some of them will have to reduce the production of fuels or product.
But the city manager also says many of these companies are critical to the local economy.
That's why we've been so closely working on this and not declaring a level 1 water emergency before it's really necessary, because we don't want to wreck our economy. We don't want to have operations closed down.
To those who say, listen, this sounds pretty dire, and shouldn't we be acting faster? What do you say?
Yeah, so I say that we have been working on this for several years now. It is a race against time, but nobody's ever lived through a drought this severe.
Maggie Vespa, NBC News.
Coming up, a soaring achievement that's giving one airline pilot a different set of wings.
Why one decorated aviator is flying high above the rest of her colleagues at United. That is next on Morning News Now. We end this hour with a remarkable achievement for one pilot who you could say is now flying higher than every one of her colleagues.
NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz introduces us to the woman who will soon be United Airlines' most senior pilot and hopes her story will inspire others to follow their soaring dreams.
Turn some lights on here.
For 41 years, United Airlines captain Kristen Wilson says she's been living her dream.
Taking off, flying through the clouds, watching the sunset. It doesn't get old.
Fittingly, Wilson now flies the Dreamliner, this massive 787 used for some of United's most prominent international routes. Here, we join Captain Wilson inside the flight deck as she prepares for a 15.5-hour flight from San Francisco to Australia.
What's your favorite part of a flight? Takeoff and landing. That's the most fun part, because that's where you get to fly.
Becoming a pilot is something Wilson says she first set her sights on when her dad took her on a friend's airplane at just 9 years old.
And we took off, and I thought that was the greatest thing in the world. And my dad said, "What are you grinning about?" I said, "This is what I'm going to do when I grow up."
At the time, it was the early 1970s. There were no women commercial airline pilots, but Wilson says that never deterred her.
When I was 12, my mom and sister and I moved to Denver, and we drove by United's Flight Training Center. And I looked at my mom and I said, "I'll be there someday."
And 10 years later, just shy of her 23rd birthday, she was one of just 4 women in her new hire class.
With few exceptions, I haven't had any problems with any of the men I've flown with. A couple guys told me I was only there because I was a woman. I got hired because I was qualified, and I know that.
More than 4 decades later, Wilson will soon be United's most senior pilot, the first woman within the airline to hold that title.
It's incredibly humbling. I never started out to be number one. I just wanted to fly airplanes. It's an honor and a privilege to be the most senior pilot at United. And honestly, I think it just shows the next generation there are no limits.
Wilson says a lot has changed for female pilots since she first began flying.
It's gotten a lot better. Not enough. I mean, we're still only about 7 or 7.5% of the pilot group.
Captain Wilson says while there's still work to do, she hopes little girls see her in the flight deck and realize the sky is truly their limit.
What do you want to say to young women, young men who dream of being a pilot?
First of all, believe that it's possible. And then do your research. I just can't say enough how fun this job is and how much it's meant to me to be able to fulfill my dream and just travel the world and get to fly cool airplanes.
Liz Kreutz, NBC News.
All right, that is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us, so the news continues right now.
Right now on Morning News Now, security concerns following that shooting over the weekend at the White House Correspondents' dinner. Surveillance video showing the gunman breaching a security point on Saturday night at the Washington Hilton Hotel. Investigators say the suspect, identified as 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen, armed with multiple weapons. The suspect set to make his first appearance in court today. What we're learning about him and who he was allegedly targeting just ahead. President Trump and several members of his cabinet were, of course, inside the ballroom at the time when those shots rang out. We're going to tell you how they're reacting. It is just the latest act of political violence in the U.S., so we're going to try to put the shooting into perspective by checking in with presidential historian Michael Beschloss.
Good morning. We're happy to have you with us. I'm Savannah Sellers, and we're so happy that so many of our colleagues are okay.
So many of our colleagues are okay. I was one of many who was in the room that night. I'm Joe Fryer. Good to have you with us.
We've got a team standing by to talk about all this and more. We're going to start things off with NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez. Gabe, good morning.
Joe and Savannah, good morning. There are now fresh questions about the security of the Washington Hilton, the same location where President Reagan was nearly assassinated 45 years ago. President Trump, himself a target of 2 previous assassination attempts as a candidate, now says he wants to redo the dinner within 30 days, though it's not clear whether that will happen.
This new video shows the tense moments after Secret Service agents wrestled the alleged White House Correspondents' dinner gunman to the ground. President Trump on 60 Minutes revealing his first reaction to the commotion inside the ballroom.
I wasn't worried. I understand life. We live in a crazy world.
And how he initially resisted being whisked away by his security detail.
I wanted to see what was happening, and I wasn't making it that easy for him. I wanted to see what was going on.
Just moments earlier, authorities say 31-year-old Cole Allen stormed through a security checkpoint before being tackled. One Secret Service officer shot but alive thanks to his bulletproof vest.
The system worked, and that we stopped this suspect, and we stopped him as soon as he tried to do what he was trying to do.
A senior administration official says Allen sent writings to family members expressing a desire to target administration officials. The annual Washington Black Tie Gala highly anticipated, with President Trump, the First Lady, and Vice President Vance attending for the first time while in office. Dinner had just started when distant bangs could be heard outside the doors. The vice president yanked to his feet and pulled out of sight, Secret Service swarming the president and first lady and evacuating the many other cabinet officials in attendance and House Speaker Mike Johnson. Now, questions about the security of the dinner. A Secret Service spokesperson telling NBC News that it was not designated a national special security event, which is used for gatherings including inaugurations and the State of the Union address. Within hours after the incident, the president back at the White House.
In light of this evening's events, I ask that all Americans recommit with their hearts in resolving our difference peacefully.
The president and his congressional allies are now using the incident to renew his push for that new White House ballroom, which is currently tied up in court. The Justice Department just sent a letter to the National Trust for Historic Preservation calling on the group to drop its lawsuit and let construction proceed. Joan Savannah.
All right, Gabe, thank you.
The suspect in Saturday night's shooting, 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen, is expected to make his first court appearance later today. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche says Allen is not cooperating with investigators. He also says law enforcement does not believe there are any other suspects involved in the shooting. NBC News Chief Justice and National Affairs Correspondent Kelly O'Donnell joins us now from Washington with more on this part of the story. Kelly, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. We're outside the courthouse where it is expected that the path toward prosecution will begin. No time set yet, but we'll have more on that as the day goes. A federal law enforcement official tells me that they have identified video inside the hotel that shows the suspect used a stairwell to get from his guest floor level down several floors to his approach toward the ballroom. He never got close to the ballroom. He was one floor above. That's part of the evidence they're reviewing. They're also looking at the writings that could suggest ways to unlock a motive. New this morning, the man who allegedly described himself as a friendly federal assassin is expected to face charges in court here in Washington. Authorities say they hope to identify what they call a triggering event for 31-year-old Cole Allen. President Trump on 60 Minutes claimed the suspect had been radicalized.
He's been going through a lot based on what he wrote. His brother complained about him and I think reported him to the police, and his sister likewise complained about him. His family was very concerned.
Investigators say Allen emailed a message to family shortly before he raced through a security perimeter one floor above the dinner event. NBC News reviewed a transcript of that note provided by a senior White House official, which talked about intended targets without naming the president, but appeared to refer to him and top cabinet officials who were in that packed ballroom.
We believe that he was targeting administration officials in this attack, attempted attack, but that's, again, quite preliminary.
Allen's message also criticized what he perceived to be lax security at the hotel. He had checked in to the same hotel one day before the correspondents' dinner, earlier traveling cross-country by train. Authorities say he had knives and illegally obtained shotgun and handgun. A Sunday search for evidence also focused on his Southern California home. Employed as a test prep teacher and trained as an engineer, Allen appeared on a 2017 local TV segment about products designed for seniors.
The wheelchair brakes tend to lock the wheels, but don't actually lock the chair to the ground.
The president noted the suspect's failure.
He got caught, and he got caught pretty easily. So I'd say he was pretty incompetent.
It is still very early in the investigation, and federal authorities say they're still trying to obtain and review video to piece together the suspect's movements. Also, they say his brother had alerted local police in Connecticut after receiving that note sent to family. Investigators also interviewed a sister who described her brother as having increasingly radicalized rhetoric. Joe?
All right, Kelly, thank you.
Let's bring in NBC News law enforcement analyst and former Secret Service agent Evie Pampouras for more. Evie, good morning. We really appreciate you coming by and lending us your expertise today. So we've been playing out this dramatic surveillance video. We have this moment captured on camera. As the president said, he was stopped quickly. I think, though, of course, the point is that he made it that far. Walk us through your reaction just to exactly what happened and what can be seen in this footage we're playing right here.
So let's split this in two, okay? When you do a site advance, this is a site advance, and I've done dozens of hotels. One of the issues you come up with is you don't shut down hotels. You allow them to function. So you look at where's my event going to be, the venue, the ballroom, the convention center. Then I build my security plan around that. The one thing you start with is where my magnetometers are going to go. That's the first layer of defense, the point of contact, where it's going to catch that threat. So you pick a spot, and I can tell you historically I've had pushback or arguments with whether staff, a hotel, as to where I'm going to place them. I want them strategically as far away from my venue as possible because I'm thinking not just weapons, detonation, IEDs, safety. Most of the time, they want them as close as possible because they don't want you sterilizing the outside area. So you can look at the mag placement. Now, if we're going to look at whether this worked or not, it did because the first layer of defense was the magnetometers. They stopped him at that point. Yes, he ran through, but they caught him. Now, the second question is he was also very close. You have multiple protectees in the venue. All those protectees were evacuated successfully. Nobody was harmed. But the other thing is the attendees, and I know, Joe, you were there, and I'm glad you're safe. You also have to put a contingency plan together for the people at the venue whenever you go somewhere. I know people think Secret Service is there. You're going to a threat, like the threat level's high. So I have to think about how am I going to keep you safe, the thousands of people that attend these events safe. So that's a separate thing. Now, put that aside. We are what? On assassination attempt number 3? I have never seen anything like this. I've served under multiple administrations. I have never seen a threat level like this. Methodologies have to change. I think the traditional ways of doing things, you can't use them anymore. So I would say I would avoid a venue like this, and this is me humbly speaking, because I don't want it at a hotel. People are getting in. People are checking in. He checked in the day before. And then I know the argument is, check the rooms. Can I check the rooms? How many rooms am I looking at? 500 rooms? And then a Fourth Amendment. Do I have the right to search a room? At what point do I check IDs? So when you have all these variables, you have to look at the location and say, this is no longer a good idea. I need something that I can actually lock down. And there has been discussion to make it an NSSE event. But when you look at NSSE events, DNC, RNC, inauguration, Capitol, State of the Union, what does that mean? I own the whole venue. I don't own this venue. It's a Hilton hotel.
You say NSSE, that's National Special Security Event. I know that's one of the questions people are asking. I want to reiterate the layout for people because I think sometimes we take for granted the fact that Washington Hilton, it's this big hotel. It was rainy out. There were protesters outside. But pretty much a lot of people, you had to show a ticket to kind of get in the front door, but also obviously people who had a hotel key could also get in the door. And then you go down an escalator, and to do that, you show this paper ticket. Again, you didn't scan the ticket ever. It was just a piece of paper you waved in front of someone, and you went down the escalator. And then there's this public area again before you even have to go through the metal security. And then at that point, as our Jim Kavanaugh sort of raised this issue earlier this morning, what if 5 or 6 people had rushed that? Then all they have to do is go down one more flight of stairs and they're in that ballroom. So you sort of raised these questions here about how do we do this differently, especially in an age where things have changed. This isn't like the dinner that we had 5, 10, 15 years ago.
No, what if I have an IED? Okay, and then also the person rushed the mags after you were all in there and secure. What if that person rushed the mags and opened fire while you're all waiting online? So these are all the levels of thinking. Once you start executing this is where copycats come in. And what is the president at? Not even 2 years? I'm not trying to be negative, but do you not think that this is going to happen again? Like, we're hitting these like one after another after another. So I think the security has to change. You're talking about a massive budget change because if you want to start locking things down, it takes resources and manpower. And then you brought up the ticket thing. Tickets, and it's not me like throwing shade at anybody else. No. Tickets is typically White House staff. I don't know who you invited. So you usually what you're supposed to have is White House staff or hosts there verifying all these tickets, looking at IDs. Could you do that? Absolutely. But again, my concern from the security side is guns, weapons. Are you clean? We call it clean and dirty. Outside of the magnetometers, dirty. Inside the magnetometers, clean. But I do want those magnetometers as far away as possible. I want the problem as far away as possible. But again, you're allowing people into the hotel, and then you have to think of it this way. What danger you're bringing all these VIPs. What danger are you exposing the attendees to? You have to think about these things. It's once somebody does something, it's brazen, it's bold, it can be done, it gives me the idea. And the other thing is, it's the population of people. Typically in the past in the U.S. Secret Service, we'd be worried about severe mental illness. And I have to tell you, usually those were the folks that would give you these type of threats. But I think we're expanding into another place of where people think they're doing something heroic. They think like this person, you villainize certain people, whether they're public officials or politicians. So they're thinking, I'm doing something righteous. I'm doing something good. So now you are hitting a different population of people. And with the expansion of threats on social media, the world has shifted, the environment has shifted, and the way security is happening is shifting. And I think they're really going to re-examine this. I say secure location. If you're going to have all these VIPs, you can't have it at a hotel. It's a Hilton hotel. They're open for business. Mm-hmm. How do you expect me to lock that thing down?
We're going to talk more about what you just mentioned in terms of the culture of political violence in just a moment with our presidential historian. But, Effie, when you mentioned thinking about the guests also, there's been a lot of talk online because there's obviously so much video from the room. It was filled with journalists who very heroically also started immediately filming to be able to report on what was happening rather than just ducking for cover, about how we saw the people who had that protection, cabinet members who were dispersed through the audience, with their teams of protection being escorted out. Right behind them, in several instances, we saw spouses and significant others not be included in that, sort of trailing behind their husband or wife as they tried to get out of there. Explain what happens in an event like this in terms of who is on a list to be immediately protected and who is not.
All right, so your number one is going to be POTUS. Your number two is going to be J.D. Vance. They get U.S. Secret Service protection. They were evacuated separately from two different parts of the stages. I know there's a little bit of a question. Why did they pull out J.D. Vance first and then POTUS? Because they're two separate details. Think of them like we're at NBC. You've got two different shows, two different executive producers. You've got different staff. So they function separately. They had their own protocol to evacuate. POTUS had his own protocol to evacuate. Within the facility itself, you've got other VIPs. So probably with HHS, Secretary Kennedy, I believe he gets U.S. Marshals. They're his protective detail. They have a plan in place, right? You're going to also get other individuals who get Capitol Police, usually members of Congress. So they've got their security details. So you're looking at all these different components coming together, trying to get their person. Usually they work with the U.S. Secret Service. They figure out where they're going to stage their vehicles. Hey, things break bad. I go this way. I go this way. Now, I can't speak to the way that they do protection or the protection bubble. Sometimes, if you're not doing protection a lot, you forget, and maybe it's the husbands or the secretaries that get the protection, and they get tunnel vision and they focus on the person and they forget that the spouse. And then in some of them, you have tag-alongs where they're coming, they're evacuating POTUS or somebody, and then people are tagging along. What do you do with those folks? Where do you put them?
Right. What's interesting, too, is after everyone does get ushered out, who's important, there's still 2,500 people left in the room. As you know, we were all standing around there going, what's going on? What just happened? There is very little cell service there. The Wi-Fi was spotty. The best you could do is get text messages in and out. Could not check websites, could not get or receive videos or photos. And they kept saying, the dinner is going to resume, to which everyone in the room went, really? And then obviously, eventually they said, this is a crime scene. We need to clear it out. But as we were all leaving, there are two narrow escalators that we are all walking up to get out. And I was thinking, if there had been a worst case situation, shooting in the ballroom, a fire, anything like that, we are not getting out of there quickly. Is that another issue that people are thinking about as they try to figure out how we have these events moving forward?
Well, at this event, I have to say, everybody was very composed.
Yes.
Everybody was watching the video. Everybody's calm and composed. And I presume because it's a White House press pool and White House Correspondents' dinner. But what if you're doing public events? You have stampedes. More people get hurt in the stampedes or the after effect from each other when you get in an environment like this. Here, everybody was calm, collected. They went under the tables. There was composure. So whenever you do a security advance, one of the things I worried about, and that's where the transition kind of shifted, not just from your protectees, but what do I do with all these folks? I'm responsible for human life. How do I get them out? What if there's a biological contamination? What if somebody spread something in there? I mean, these are things you have to think of. How do you get them out? What is safe? You're very fortunate that you're dealing again with a lone person. And what we've seen with these last three, they've all been lone. And I think we need to not be, I don't want to say complacent. It's just the world has shifted. has shifted. And, even the individual in their manifesto kind of made some comments. I'm surprised I was able to get in. I'm surprised nobody's done this. Sometimes people in their mind think the security is more beefed up than it typically is. And again, the Secret Service prides itself like, we're going to work. We don't like to say no. And I'd always hear that. We don't say no. We make it work. We make it work. And I just don't think that that's going to fly anymore.
I think, though, Evie, quickly, if you wouldn't mind just explaining, the fact that right now is when we're seeing this rise in threats, it's not a quick process to change a budget, to change systems. What does that mean in the near term?
I think they need more money. They're going to need it if they're going to start locking things down. Two, I think also, like, a lot of times when a site is done, like I would get a site or a location, they say, look, it's been done. Here's the previous one. And what I would do is I'd have the previous advance and I'd say, well, I'm going to do my own. And I didn't think like a Secret Service agent. Always thought like an assassin. If I were going to do this, how would I do it? And it's always helped me find holes. And there were times where I would look at a security plan that was done before me. And I would say, this was not done well. Hole. Now you would go back and argue, and then the argument would be, well, this previous agent did it this way. Why can't you do it this way? And now I'm negotiating, debating, because they're looking at money, resources, manpower. And there were times, and I remember I had one incident specifically where I added another 30 people. It was a hotel site for a president. And I said, I don't know how this previous agent secured this with, I think it was 45, 50 agents. I need 70, 75. And I had to push back. And they brought supervisors in to walk through, and I had to walk and show every single point, which is something as a senior agent I never had to do before. And I said, you know what? I put a good security plan together. Give me as many as you want, but this is what I need to secure this and lock this down. I understand somebody before me did it, but I'm not going to acquiesce. You have to be able to do that. Not everybody can.
Evie Pamporis, your expertise is so appreciated on a morning like this. Thanks for coming by.
A Saturday night shooting at the Washington Hilton is the latest in recent years in a string of acts labeled as political violence.
Yeah, we were just talking about this. According to researchers from START, targeted political violence is up more than 30% in the last 2 years.
For more on this, let's bring in NBC News presidential historian Michael Beschloss. Michael, thanks for joining us, especially on days like this. It's always good to tap into your experience. We should note this shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner took place at the Washington Hilton, the same hotel where President Ronald Reagan was shot back in the 1980s. Just what were your initial thoughts when you first heard about what happened Saturday night?
Well, I was watching. I wasn't there, and thank God you're well, Joe. The thing that really my mind came to, of course, was 1981, 30th of March. Ronald Reagan, as you know, was in that room giving a speech to the AFL-CIO, came out. We now see the image on the screen, and was getting into his car, and there's a crowd. What do you notice? Open air, sunlight, there's a crowd there. Go back to 1975, 2 times Gerald Ford was almost killed by gunfire in California. Second time, he was coming out of the St. Francis Hotel, San Francisco, with a crowd around, was almost shot to death. The Secret Service did not learn from that you don't have presidents going into cars in open air. Now that spot, as you know, where Ronald Reagan was getting into that car, it's now an enclosed stone structure so that when a president like President Trump comes to and leaves the Washington Hilton, it's done without the crowd being able to have access to it.
Michael, we've been talking all morning about how, of course, this is not the first time that the Trump administration has been targeted. The 2024 election campaign, there were 2 assassination attempts. We just heard from Evie, who has worked, as she said, for several administrations. She's never seen anything like this, never dealt with a threat level this high. What is your reaction to that, to the fact that it essentially feels like there is no precedent in terms of the violence we're seeing right now?
Well, the death threats are going up, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, thank God for us citizens that we don't have to see all the terrible threats that do come in. Although even in, last decades, an airplane literally flew into the side of the White House, the South grounds, when Bill Clinton was there. So there's a little bit of precedent for that. But the point is that America, as we all know, sadly, is angrier and more polarized and more divided, as the polls tell us. And what has happened here is that a dinner that was great perhaps in the 1960s and 1970s at the Washington Hilton with over 2,000 people and all that access to that room Joe, did you hear the gunshots from where you were sitting?
No, what's fascinating is, again, I was more on the outskirts where someone like Gabe, or earlier this morning we spoke with Andrea Mitchell, was in the center. I heard people describe gunshots. I heard people sort of sounded like a percussion noise. I heard like 4 things that sounded like almost percussion. For those of us who were farther away, it almost was like someone maybe dropped a dish or something like that. And so there was this difference because, as you know, Michael, that ballroom is just so massive.
Right. It's enormous. And sadly, in these times, we have to remember, for instance, that in 1954, there was a gunman, more than one, in the House of Representatives in the gallery that shot down and shot people who were standing there on the floor. You know, that was over 70 years ago. So this has happened in time. We citizens and journalists and historians like me, I think, have to say to the government, you want to protect democracy? First way of doing that is make sure that at an event like this, safety is paramount. And as Evie said, I think the other night, sadly, safety was not paramount. It was not good enough.
Michael Beschloss, as always, it is good to have you with us in moments like this. We appreciate your time.
Same here. Thank you.
Let's switch over to weather now. We're tracking some severe storms impacting the Mississippi and Ohio River Valley. Let's get a closer look with your Morning News Now forecast.
Meteorologist Andrea Romero joins us now. Andrea, good morning.
Good morning, Joe and Savannah. And it's a very dangerous stretch of weather that's moving through the central U.S. this morning. We can even see some tornado warnings that continue to impact here parts of north central Missouri. We also have some severe thunderstorm warnings in those areas as well, with a severe thunderstorm watch in effect up until 10 o'clock Central Time this morning, and that possibly could be extended even further. We also have these flood alerts. Flash flood warnings are up for this whole area. So that means that those conditions are occurring in that location. So you want to make sure you have ways to receive those weather alerts. And if you need to take shelter because of the tornadoes, you do so. And you're very careful if you are planning to drive in that area. The flash flood risk will continue throughout today, stretching all the way from parts of Kansas into parts of the Ohio River Valley. And we're expecting these storms to impact and target the Midwest today with that enhanced risk of severe weather. We have the possibility of training storms all the way from Missouri into Indiana. And of course, the main threat is the fact that we could have those tornado, long tracking tornadoes, perhaps even as strong as EF3s that could be impacting that area. Now, for tomorrow, that storm threat will diminish for that part of the country, but it will redevelop across parts of the South. And that's going to be where we're expecting that severe weather tomorrow, with wind gusts of over 60 miles per hour possible. And we could see some tornadoes, although the tornadic threat won't be as high as it is today for the Midwest. Of course, we're also looking at that fire weather threat with windy, dry, and very low humidity over the southern plains. So that elevated risk of fire danger continues.
All right, Andrea, thank you so much. There's much more to come here on Morning News Now. King Charles and Queen Camilla are set to arrive in the United States today for their first official state visit as king and queen. Later this hour, we'll tell you what's on the agenda and what's at stake during this royal visit.
Up first, a planned weekend trip to Pakistan for renewed talks with Iran canceled by the Trump administration. So we'll tell you what's next in this now 2-month-long conflict.
We are back now with the latest out of the Middle East. President Trump said he canceled the U.S. delegation's trip to Pakistan for renewed peace talks with Iran this weekend, citing too much time, wasted on travel and, quote, tremendous infighting and confusion among Iran's leadership.
Iran's foreign minister did arrive in Russia early this morning to meet with President Vladimir Putin. He told Iranian state media that he's seeking to strengthen relations between those two countries.
NBC News International correspondent Molly Hunter joins us from Tel Aviv with the latest. Molly, good morning. So what else did President Trump have to say about why he canceled the U.S. delegation's trip to Pakistan this weekend, and where does that leave the future of these talks?
Savannah, Joe, good morning to you. So, Savannah, I wish I had a better answer for kind of the future of these talks. Over the weekend, there was a lot of will they, won't they, kind of hope was high when the Iranian foreign minister headed to Islamabad, Pakistan, and then when the White House announced that actually Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner were going to head there, you know, everyone was thinking that maybe this was the moment that Pakistan would host the second round of talks. And then President Trump posted on Truth Social. Take a look at this. I think we have this as a graphic for our audience. He wrote, "I just canceled the trip of my representatives going to Islamabad." Savannah, as you already referenced, too much time wasted on traveling, too much work. And then he ended that post by saying, if they want to talk, all they have to do is call. Well, there's a new report this morning that Axios has exclusively citing two sources with knowledge and a U.S. official. And they report that actually Iran passed on a new proposal via Pakistani mediators to the U.S. It included a clause about reopening the Strait of Hormuz, ending the war, but importantly, kicking the nuclear issue down the road to future negotiations, guys.
Molly, what is the latest on just traffic through the Strait of Hormuz? We know how important that is when it comes to reaching any sort of long-term peace deal.
Yeah, so guys, still just a trickle going through the U.S. naval blockade still in place. And we know that the Iranians say that the U.S. naval blockade is their main sticking point. The maritime data that we have from over the weekend, 3 ships were able to pass through that critical waterway yesterday. But we are in this weird limbo. There is no hot war. There is no permanent deal. Both sides are using the Strait of Hormuz, as leverage, and no end in sight for that as long as a permanent deal remains elusive.
Molly, as we mentioned, Iran's foreign minister is now meeting with President Putin in Russia. What do we know about those talks?
Yeah, so we had a readout from the foreign minister's office this morning. As you guys mentioned, it is a lot about strengthening relations with their key ally, Russia. But he did, on landing, the foreign minister spoke about his time in Pakistan. He said it was constructive. It was very good as far as talking about the conditions under which Iranian and U.S. negotiations can continue. But he is in St. Petersburg, and I think at this very hour, actually, meeting with Russian President Putin.
All right, Molly Hunter, thank you so much.
Coming up, King Charles is beginning a 4-day trip to the U.S. today and his first state visit since taking the throne.
When we come back, we'll preview what we can expect as the U.S. and U.K. look to strengthen their bonds as longtime allies. You're watching Morning News Now.
We're back now with the latest on our top story. The shooting at the White House Correspondents' dinner on Saturday. President Trump, the First Lady, and members of the administration were all evacuated when a would-be assassin entered the hotel where the event was taking place.
It's an incident that's raising new questions about security. And this morning, we're learning new details about the suspect in custody, 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen from California. And he's due to be arraigned in federal court later today.
NBC News political reporter Megan Leibowitz was at the dinner when the shooting happened. Joins us now to talk more about this. Megan, you were just a few feet away from me when all of this unfolded. Talk more about what you experienced and witnessed that night.
Yeah, it was a really unnerving experience. Joe, you and I, we were at the periphery of the ballroom, so I also did not hear any gunshots. And the first indication that I had that anything was wrong was when the person next to me said, "What's happening? What's happening?" And you look over and you see that there's a rush of security running up the center of the ballroom. And, you know, my initial reaction was maybe someone was having some kind of medical emergency. I did not notice any sort of, threat in the room at that point or anything. And I think that my first indication that this was not, in fact, a medical emergency, that something, perhaps some kind of threat was taking place, was when we saw the president and the vice president be taken off of the stage, and you saw these heavily armed security forces in full tactical gear with very long rifles running on stage and standing there. And I had taken out my phone to record what was happening, like many other reporters in the room, and then I think it was the person next to me who said, get down, and I think that's when I realized, there might be some kind of potential threat that is still in the room. And so we got down, and I remember looking around and seeing where there could be any potential exit, and locating one about 20 feet away from me and saying to the person next to me, hey, if we have to run, that looks like it's the closest exit. And then, it was probably only a couple of minutes that there was that moment of confusion before it seemed to we realized that there did not seem to be any imminent threat in the room. But, I will say one of the most unnerving parts of that was this ballroom with, more than 2,000 people suddenly get eerily quiet, and it was just everyone at the same time. A hush fell over the entire crowd as everyone was trying to figure out what was actually going on right now.
There was that hush, and Megan, I don't know if you saw, but a few minutes after the chaos unfolded, up where we were, there was an armed law enforcement officer, gun out,
yes,
who walked directly behind us and went through telling everyone to just get out of his way, which sort of just added to some of the drama that was unfolding there.
We're so happy y'all are both okay, all of our colleagues in the room. I think also what was amazing as somebody who wasn't there but was watching a lot of this and of course started checking in as soon as this news came out was the way that so many of our colleagues flipped over into reporting right away. Recording, we heard earlier, Andrea Mitchell had to be told to get under a table because she was recording it. And Megan, now that's exactly what you're doing today is reporting on this. We know we have more information about the suspect. What are the charges that he's expected to be charged with today at the arraignment and other details that we have at this point?
Yeah, so the suspect has not been formally charged yet, but U.S. Attorney for D.C. Jeanine Pirro had previewed what she expects some of those charges to be over the weekend. She said that she expects the suspect to be charged with 2 counts of using a firearm during a crime of violence and assault on a federal officer using a dangerous weapon. Now, both Pirro and Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche also emphasized over the weekend that, this investigation is still in its very early stages and that there could be potentially more charges that are added on once they have a better sense as to what unfolded and learn more information about the suspect, who, by the way, Todd Blanche had said is not cooperating with authorities right now. Now, we're also learning more about the suspect's background. The suspect is a trained engineer and more recently had been working on developing video games and worked part-time as a teacher. He actually had been awarded Teacher of the Month at his place of work in December of 2024. We're learning that according to his LinkedIn, he graduated from Caltech in 2017 and then went on to obtain his master's degree in computer science from California State University. We're also learning that he appeared to have bought his guns legally. He bought a shotgun in August of 2025 and bought a pistol in October of 2023. Now, also according to a senior administration official, the suspect's sister told law enforcement after the shooting unfolded in an interview that her brother had regularly went to a shooting range to train with the guns. Joe and Savannah.
All right, Megan Leibowitz reporting from Washington. Megan, thank you so much.
Well, as Washington continues to process this violence over the weekend, in just a few hours, King Charles and Queen Camilla will arrive in the nation's capital, moving forward with their first official state visit to the United States as king and queen. The 4-day royal visit is aimed at reinforcing the longstanding alliance between the U.S. and U.K. It will blend tradition, diplomacy, and high-stakes politics with a state dinner and the king's address to Congress. NBC News correspondent Danielle Hamamdjian has the latest on this trip. Danielle, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. After the shooting on Saturday, there were questions about whether or not this state visit would go ahead. Well, on Sunday night, the palace putting out a statement saying on the advice of the government, the state visit would go ahead, but no doubt security will be under the microscope. Now, the palace doesn't usually or rarely does it ever comment about security, but we should note that there is a dedicated unit at the Metropolitan Police dedicated to the security and the protection of the royals, whether it be here at home or abroad. And they will have certainly been working in coordination with U.S. authorities ahead of the state visit. Today, King Charles embarks on the most high-profile trip of his reign so far, marking the 250th anniversary of U.S. independence. It's now President Trump's turn to host the king. During his first visit to America as head of state, he and his wife, Queen Camilla, will have tea with Trump and be the guests of honor at a White House banquet. Charles is no stranger to the U.S. His first trip there back in 1970. By the mid-'80s, it was his then-wife, Princess Diana, who stole the show by famously dancing with John Travolta at a White House gala. But those visits, never as consequential as the one he's about to make.
The British government is trusting the king and his expertise to see if he can go some way to smoothing those ruffled feathers that have appeared in the transatlantic relationship between the UK and the US.
That special relationship now increasingly strained. Trump not only mocking the UK military, but repeatedly lashing out at Prime Minister Keir Starmer for refusing to join the attack on Iran. Yet it's Starmer and his government who decide when and where the king travels.
Sir Ed Davey.
But even senior politicians here have urged the Prime Minister to call off the trip and the meeting with Trump.
He is no friend of the United Kingdom. He's no leader of the free world. He is a dangerous and corrupt gangster. We cannot put His Majesty in that position.
But Charles is now viewed as the ultimate diplomat, much like the late Queen Elizabeth.
Charles learnt from the best by watching his mother meet countless presidents, and he's going to be putting that experience into practice this week.
Elizabeth met more than a dozen U.S. presidents and traveled to America on numerous state visits. And like her, Charles will deliver a highly anticipated address to Congress.
Your Congress and our Parliament are the twin pillars of our civilizations.
Trump always speaking highly of her late majesty, and now calling her son, the king, a great man. Now, the king and queen did reach out privately to the president and the first lady to offer their sympathies, and we understand there will be some adjustments to some of the royal engagements over the next few days. But Savannah, don't expect any family reunions while the king is there. He will not be meeting with his son, Prince Harry, during this 4-day visit to the U.S. Back to you.
All right, Danielle, thank you so much. Coming up, could cutting down your commute time soon become a reality?
Yeah, up next, we're going to tell you about a company creating a big buzz for an air taxi that may take off soon. Got details ahead.
We're back with an NBC News exclusive. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, says he wants to use artificial intelligence to find a cure for Alzheimer's disease. He sat down with NBC News special anchor Maria Shriver, who has the details. Maria, good morning.
Good morning. As the creator of ChatGPT, Sam Altman knows how to innovate. Now he believes AI is the key to treating one of medicine's biggest challenges, Alzheimer's disease. His OpenAI Foundation pledging $100 million for research and a cure.
The fact that we're sitting here having a serious conversation about the systems we have built today, maybe being able to help us make progress against Alzheimer's, is really quite remarkable.
Sam Altman is used to thinking big. With the creation of ChatGPT, his company, OpenAI, is changing how we work, plan, and think. Now Altman wants to harness the massive brain power of AI to solve one of the biggest mysteries of the human brain, Alzheimer's disease.
Why do you think AI can revolutionize Alzheimer's?
Alzheimer's is an incredibly complex disease. AI is very good at synthesizing huge amounts of data, being an expert in multiple different fields, and bringing together the insights across all of those.
His OpenAI Foundation now pledging one of the largest donations ever to Alzheimer's research. $100 million to study how AI can fast-track better diagnostics, treatments, and even a cure.
Why Alzheimer's? Did someone you love get it?
Thankfully, no. But this has been an area that has been extraordinarily difficult to make progress in. We now, for the first time in the last few months, have made AI systems that are smart enough that our best scientists are saying, this changes the game for science. This means science will move faster. These models are discovering new knowledge on their own. So this is the first time a tool that we have built, that humans have built, is autonomously contributing to the sum total of human knowledge.
The $100 million in grants will fund the work of top Alzheimer's researchers like UCSF's Dr. Bruce Miller and Silvana Konerman from the Arc Institute.
AI has the unique ability to really make sense of a disease like Alzheimer's that is such a complex combination of risk factors like diabetes or heart disease, exercise, gender, age.
Sam Altman said that AI will be different tackling Alzheimer's because it will be able to read the millions of pieces of data from all over the world and be able to find the little nuggets in all of it that might have missed the human eye.
I totally agree. I think we are so siloed. A laboratory will do a set of experiments, the results will be brilliant, and no one else will see it. But to have us unified and to have all of that data analyzed in a way we've never done before. I think that's revolutionary.
Altman says solving Alzheimer's is only the beginning. His foundation vowing to pledge $25 billion to life sciences and curing diseases, as well as to protecting society from the misuses of AI.
What can you say to people who don't assure me that humanity is not going to be annihilated and these machines are going to take over the world?
Not every technological change has been good for humanity on the whole. For sure, there will be jobs that AI does entirely, and society will have to evolve to be resilient.
Altman himself is learning resilience. This recent story in The New Yorker questioning, can he be trusted with the reins of AI?
An attack on the home of one of the biggest names in tech.
Earlier this month, his San Francisco home was attacked by agitators. In response, Altman posting this photo of his husband and their one-year-old son, writing he hoped it might dissuade the next person from throwing a Molotov cocktail at our house, no matter what they think about me.
People look at you, you're 40 years old. They've read that you're maybe not trustworthy, that maybe you're too young. Who are you to have this kind of power in the hands of one person?
I don't think this much power should be in the hands of one person, nor do I think it is. We are going to put AI in the hands of people early, often, so that society can take this technology and build all of the things on top of it. Now, that is messy. Things will go wrong.
But what about the personal responsibility that comes with it?
I don't feel responsible for everything everybody will do with AI, of course, but I feel tremendously responsible for putting this technology out into the world in the best way that we can, where everybody can flourish.
So you sleep?
Not super great, but it's a very busy time.
Those we spoke to say new treatments could come soon, and with the help of AI, a cure could be possible within a decade. Altman says he's very hopeful.
All right, Maria, thank you.
Now to an eye-opening look at the future of travel in big cities. Imagine jumping in an air taxi, a mix between a plane and a helicopter, quickly soaring over traffic to your destination. The company leading the charge, Joby, claims it is potentially, get this, just a few months away from gaining FAA approval. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock got an up-close and personal look at the aircraft, joins us now from New York's JFK Airport with more on why it could be revolutionary in so many ways and lots of dramatic lighting. Sam, good morning.
We intended it that way. The cinematography is on point, guys. Good morning. Look, obviously, think about how disruptive ride sharing was back in the day, early 2010s. Now picture what that would be like with aviation. You have the air taxi from Joby. They've been working on this tech for about a decade plus. These are one of the 6 motors right here. They start vertical for electric propulsion, guys. Once it's hovering in the air and reaches a certain altitude, those motors then go horizontal, and it's effectively a fixed wing aircraft. It's quiet, it's all electric, and it's meant for mass travel. Picture the price of a premium rideshare. This right here could be changing aviation as we know it. You're looking at liftoff of an aircraft from the future. Except it's primed to smash expectations in the present from San Francisco to New York to Osaka, Japan, where flight demos have already stoked a major buzz around this electric-powered air taxi created by California-based Joby that combines a vertical ascent with a mid-air transition to fixed-wing flying, all through 6 ultra-efficient motors.
It looks like a helicopter. It looks like a plane. What is it?
Our lift systems all tilt forward with the nacelles. Now, the benefit of that is we look like a helicopter when we take off, but then we transition to wing-borne flight.
Lead demonstration flight test pilot Buddy Denham
100% you're looking at the future of aviation here.
Took us around the plane. He acknowledges gives off Jetsons vibes, even surprising ATC controllers on a recent test flight.
What is that thing? It's a Joby.
But rest assured, is real. Inside the aircraft, there's more than 50 different computers all talking to one another. Now, the pilot is still the conductor of this operation, but the computers are what's doing the heavy lifting.
It's one of the first few airplanes in the history where the pilot controls are not hooked to a control surface on the airplane. They go to the flight control computer. The pilot actually asks for exactly what he or she wants to fly.
The company's CEO, Joe Ben Bevert, says the air taxi, which holds up to 4 passengers and can fly around 140 miles an hour, is not meant for the 1%ers, but for any passengers looking for a 10-minute lift to the airport.
In terms of the price point, our target is to be competitive with ground transportation over time. The electric propulsion on our aircraft makes these aircraft dramatically more efficient.
Joby acquired helicopter company Blade last year and in the process acquired its infrastructure and routes. Like this one, from New York's JFK to the West Side Highway in the city. But there's a big difference in acoustic footprint.
With an electric motor, there's no roar of an engine like on this helicopter. According to Joby, the air taxis are 100 times quieter, so subtle that the people on the ground aren't even going to hear it.
We could have a conversation in a cafe. You would never hear the airplane come over.
The FAA could grant approval in the coming year as part of a sweeping program in 12 states to streamline new technologies like these, called eVTOL.
It's going to give us different regional mobility. Where we live, where we work can fundamentally change with an eVTOL.
The tech being explored by a number of companies that could be coming to a city near you.
This is a game changer for our industry. Very excited about rolling out service in New York, Florida, and Texas. This is a really exciting moment for the launch of this next mode of transportation.
And a lot of excited consumers, guys. So, Joe, Savannah, right now, the air taxi is being prepped for a demonstration run. That's going to happen in the next couple of hours. As for the pricing, let's go back to that for a second. If you want to go from Midtown to JFK, because some folks may not have perspective on this, right now with a ride share, it's about $150 to $200. That is the price point that Joby is trying to get to, either that or eventually lower, as they scale up the production of the air taxis, which is expected to happen over the course of the next several years. Right. Guys, back to you.
Can't wait to hear about it when you fly in it, Sam. Thank you so much.
Let us know.
I'm looking forward to it.
Coming up, how the spring season and warmer weather is bringing a sense of optimism and hope.
Up next, we're going to hear what people are wishing for in the weeks ahead. Stay with us. Finally, this hour, we're skipping into spring with an extra sense of gratitude this morning. The warmer weather, the blooming flowers. It's often a time for us to appreciate new chapters in our lives.
NBC News Now anchor Hallie Jackson has some candid reflections on how the spring season gives us that brighter outlook on the future.
Hey there, we've got a sweet one for you about the start of spring and the new possibilities in bloom for all of us. With spring now in full swing across the country, it finally feels like it.
Seeing the people out and the beautiful weather, it can't be beat.
A nation waking up to bask in the sunshine and celebrate the buds of new beginnings.
For me, it's always been like a rebirth when everything is in bloom.
What makes me happy is waking up in the morning and seeing the sun outside my window.
Really looking forward just to the nicer weather. Everyone seems so much happier.
Looking to brighter days ahead.
Something good that happened to me is Winston welcoming to the world. I'm looking forward to my final exams.
And with a new chapter, excitement for a new generation.
The most beautiful in my life was him.
I'm always excited about my grandkids.
I'm just getting to spend time with him every day.
Plus, wishes for more memories with the people we love most.
What makes me happy is hugging my mom.
I got to come to New York with my best friend I haven't seen in 3 years.
Everything comes down to community.
A time for finding ourselves.
Figuring out what I want to be when I grow up. There's so much yet that I still would like to try and do.
Discovering myself makes me happy too. Getting to know who I am.
New adventures.
I just graduated nursing school.
I'm going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro with my father in June.
A little romance too.
Ah, right there. My wife, when she's smiling.
My son got engaged to a beautiful lady.
Spending time with my better half. Every day that I spend with my girlfriend, I get to know her better and better.
And with the change in scenery, new hope to find balance and peace of mind.
I'm wishing for more peace and calm
and clarity.
I wish for people to come together and be able to appreciate all of the things that our world has to offer.
A reminder to take nothing for granted and to stop and smell the roses.
This early spring makes you feel good and hopeful that nothing lasts forever.
And plenty of time to enjoy this season before summer makes its way here. Back to you.
All right, Allie. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us, though. The news continues right now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.